Everybody, guess what? What is the difference between seeing patients every 30 minutes, staying 55 to 65 minutes in duration, every 40 minutes, every 45 minutes? Well, that is the question we're going to find the answer to. Because in private practice today, so many owners and so many people that reach out to me are struggling financially with this income squeeze, obviously. It's a big issue all across the nation. And people are finding ways, or trying to find ways to raise revenue and reduce costs. Obviously, reducing costs, all the ancillary costs, is easily solved by outsourcing so many services, right? Outsourcing front desk, outsourcing, even if you just outsource your insurance verification authorization services, so your front desk could be more patient, focused, more patient engaging. I can speak today. More patient forward facing and more patient engagement, more of the hostess with the mostest kind of atmosphere at your front desk, you are going to attract more business and you're going to get a better quality of scheduling, a better quality of patient satisfaction and patient enhancement and patient engagement and all the stuff that you want from your front desk. So you could literally just outsource that. Obviously, outsourcing billing, nobody wants to keep that in-house. One person gets sick and goes out, your income comes to a halt. So we don't want that. But operationally speaking, we need to be able to find what is the best schedule for us. Because honestly, how many of us have been held captive to the schedule that we have? How many of us are being held back or suppressed from the insurance companies reducing reimbursement, from Medicare over-regulating what we can do and dictating how we deliver our care, from insurance companies going to flat rate payers? They're just paying us a flat rate. They're not even paying us for what we do anymore. They're just paying us for the patient to show up. We're getting paid less than massage therapists in most clinics that I talk to. Most practice owners share with me what their rates of reimbursement are. A massage therapist makes more money than us per hour treating a patient. All of this is wrong. But instead of whining and complaining, and that's not my mode of operandi, that is not my feelings at all. I'm like always interested in sharing with you what you can do to make a big difference. So I'm going to go through the 3 types of schedules, and you can look and evaluate for yourself what is the best schedule for you. Because it's an emotional response in many cases when people come to me and say, hey, I'm scheduling one patient every 60 minutes. That is an emotional decision. That is not in the best interest of patient care, regardless of how you personally feel about it. Doesn't prove itself out. That's not proved in statistics or documentation at any level. Some of the best physical therapists in the world are seeing patients every 30 minutes, every 20 minutes in Canada in some cases. So it really just depends on where you are and how you're practicing, what your manual therapy skills are. And it goes into a lot of other factors, your demographics and stuff like that. But here in the US, in today's environment, unless you're like all neuro and all one-on-one or all, some specialty, so like women's health or pediatrics or something like that, there's no justification for what's in the best interest of the community, the referral sources, the practice, the staff, and the patients for you to be seeing patients every 60 minutes. And I'll argue that with anybody. And I'm not alone. Many, many other business coaches in the physical therapy space will also stand up on stage and say, yep, that's really not in the best interest of patient care, nor is it in the best interest of your community, your staff, and your practice. So setting that one aside, because I don't even want to talk about seeing patients every 60 minutes. It has to be a complete anomaly, a complete justificational reason, such as all neuro, as to why you're doing that. Outside of that, what the most common schedules are that we see that most people are using today is every 45 minutes, every 40 minutes, and every 30 minutes, them coming in. Now, when I say every 30 minutes, I mean the patient is staying 55 to 65 minutes. Somewhere in that range of 55 to 65 minutes, they are in-house receiving physical therapy care and having some degree of engagement within your practice. So just kind of take that one as an assumption. What is the norm for visits per week for most practices across the country? In the top 10%. Practices in the top 10% are seeing patients anywhere from 12 to 16 visits a day. 12 to 16 a day. I don't see many people seeing 16 a day anymore. So I'm going to say, from my experience, 12 to 14 visits a day. 11 visits a day is the bare minimum that I believe anybody should be operating with. Anything under that, unless you're in the Pacific Northwest and you're making 135 a visit, you're just not going to financially make it. You just won't. But even when you do that, you're going to lean into this idea that you can only see one patient at a time in front of you, and that's just not the case. 90% of America does not treat like that. You can have people that cross over, and you can have supervised modality application. You can have direct one-on-one attended time. You can have, unattended and attended time. You have so many different payers coming in. You have the AMA rule of reimbursement. You have the Medicare 8 to 23 minute rule of reimbursement. So you have such different demographics. You have a lot to factor in. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here just to explain to you the options and share with you what you can consider is going to be the best fit for you in your practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. How do I help you live the life you've always envisioned for yourself as a practice owner? How do I help advance the profession of physical therapy? Well, if I keep quiet and everybody's doing a horrible 60-minute schedule and practices are dropping like flies because they can't stay open, well, that doesn't help the profession at all. So here's what you can do. Let's look at what the impact is on the 30-minute schedule, the 30-minute schedule. Patients coming in every 30 minutes. Well, you could really succeed in that schedule, succeed in that standard operating process or procedure, SOP, if in fact you are of the size and the nature that you have an overwhelming volume of patients coming in, number one. Number two, Medicare is less than 30% of your total census. That usually helps. Doesn't have to be less than 30, but it typically is when people are running this schedule. Number two. Number three, you have enough staff that you've broken your team delivery system up into teams, into pods, we call it. Green team, blue team, red team. Maybe we call it teams. Or red pod, green pod, blue pod. And that pod consists of each person having their own linear schedule, but they're also allowed to help each other. And a pod is a PT1, PT2, PTA, and a tech. You have those four people in one pod. You have another pod, or another team, however you want to call it. You're able to actually make up for when somebody cancels or no-shows, and somebody can step in and help somebody else out, or somebody has an opening in their schedule. Every single patient evaluation is finished like this. So, Mr. Jones, if you don't have any other questions about your shoulder, it definitely seems like a simple tendonitis. I'm going to invite Heather in to introduce you to Heather. I would prefer that you schedule between myself and Heather throughout your entire duration of care. I'm going to pull out a script here and write you a PT script for you to bring up to our front desk for 2 times a week for the next 4 weeks for your physical therapy care. Seeing both Heather and myself, you get the ingenuity and expertise of 2 therapists. You get the schedule availability of 2 therapists to assist you in getting better days and times for you. It allows us to have somewhat of a co-treating, so we get to learn from each other. And it also helps in the event of sick or holiday or vacations. You can see one of us versus another, and you don't feel like you're starting all over. So it's better for you as a patient, better for us as a team, and definitely better for the practice because we can be more consistent in our delivery of therapy to you. So that's what we do. That's our operating basis here, and I think you're going to really love it. So let me bring Heather on in here and meet you, and then you can take this referral up to the front desk, and they'll schedule out your entire plan of care. Now, when people do that, they're part of that team and they just love it. They know the tech who's working with them, moving them from equipment to equipment, helping them get their home exercise program understood or replicated so that they either have a hard copy or a soft copy, whatever they want. By no means am I suggesting that the tech is doing any billable services. They are a facilitator for the clinicians to do those billable services. I understand that a PTA reimbursement has gone down, but I also understand that the cost of delivering services through a PTA connected to the income of those services, it is still proportionately positive for us as a practice owner to go ahead and do that. So I am definitely a fan of building these pods and teams. But that's when you have a busy clinic, right? You're doing like 200 visits a week, 300 visits a week, something like that. The average mom and pop 15 to 1800 square foot office or 2100 square foot office is doing about 150 to 180 visits a week. I'm talking 200 plus visits a week in your practice. You really are primed and set and ready to do that type of schedule. You're probably looking at that point in time about 245 units a week. If in fact we're assuming 3.5 units per engagement. So if we assume 3.5 units per engagement, I'm not here to dictate to you. I'm just giving you a case example. If it's that, then we're probably looking at somewhere in the area of 14 visits a day. And you could be somewhere between cancellation, no-show rate, and all that kind of stuff, somewhere around 65 visits a week. 65 to 70 visits a week, 14 visits a day. In a pod, in an environment like that, you could really do well for the practice. You could really give great patient care. We won practice of the year operating like that. We never had a patient feel like they didn't get one-on-one patient care. That never came up. They all felt fully individualized in their care. They loved their team. It worked really well. Stepping down from the number one schedule in the country, which is that one, the number two schedule would be the every 40-minute schedule. I like this schedule. I like this schedule a lot. You're going to be averaging about 12 visits a day. You're going to be averaging, again, about 210 units a week is what I calculated. And that's units of care. That has nothing to do with money. That has to do with the volume of care. The more care I can give on a week-to-week basis, the more people I'm helping, the more help I'm providing, right? That's why we went to PT school. That's the way I feel about this. So I think you guys are going to really do well if you're on a 40-minute schedule. You probably have one tech per every 3 PTs, and that will work really well. You can introduce PTAs in this schedule as well, but you definitely want to have 2 PTs on board full time before you bring in that first PTA. If you hire it the opposite way, you're always going to be hustling to try and feed that PTA, and they're going to be sitting around doing nothing from time to time. So it's out sequence. I find the most successful sequence in hiring as you grow and see your practice grow and expand is to get PT1, maybe you, PT2, your first hire, PTA is your third in terms of clinical hiring, right? Of course, I'm a big fan of outsourcing your admin staff because I want to keep that payroll down. I want to keep the benefits down. I want to keep the raises down. I need to manage costs. I'd rather just pay a flat bill and not have to match FICA and Social Security and worry about unemployment and all the personnel kind of stuff that goes along with that. There's a value to that. It's not just about the dollars and cents of payroll. It's about what am I getting in that valuable exchange for those services. We have it literally, as I'm speaking to you right now, 6 new clinics rolling out with virtual front desk services, whether it be IVO or full virtual front desk services. And we are literally starting to book out into June, and even in August, we have somebody already in the schedule. So it's definitely catching on. It's gaining ground for sure. People are realizing the benefits of that, and they're going for it. And they love the fact that they know exactly what they're paying per month for those services, and those services should exceed their expectations. So anyways, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but it does go in with this 40-minute schedule because it will help you to be that much more productive and viable when you do that. So 12 visits a day is about what you're going to get on that. If you go to the third type of schedule, which I see quite often, but I think it's just a cop-out. I think it's a cop-out from the 60-minute schedule just to make people, in some ways, my opinion, don't hate me for this. I just think it's just such a nudge off of the 60-minute schedule. It doesn't really change much. You're only doing 10 visits a day. It's under the acceptable limit of 11 visits a day. And you're getting about 175 units per week. I mean, think about it. When you're in that best schedule in the country that the top practices are using, patients coming in every 30 minutes. Again, like I said, staying 55 to 65 minutes, you're giving 245 units of care, 245 units of skilled physical therapy services going out in a week per therapist. If you're on that 45-minute schedule, you're delivering 175 units of care. Guess what? You have the same expenses. You have the same overhead. You have the same struggles, taxes, insurance. You have the same things to deal with. You have the same baggage. You are going to have a tougher and tougher, more difficult time thriving, let alone surviving in today's economy with this income squeeze that we're all suffering with. That 45-minute schedule needs to be really looked at. Now, some people have higher reimbursements in some part of the country, and it just makes them feel like, it's the happy medium. I'm not quite at that 60-minute, but I am not having to push further. And some people look around and say, well, what are all my competitors doing? Well, I get that. But you need to be a leader in your area, in your marketplace, not a follower. I mean, if you're constantly looking around to see what the sheep are doing, well, they're eating grass like every other sheep is eating grass. Is that all you're going to do? Or are you going to literally go through the creek, the river, and go to the other area where there's fresh grown wheat and corn? That's how you want to run your practice. What are you going to do in 2024 to innovate your practice? I mean, that's a question that you need to answer. What are you going to change that's going to modernize what your delivery system is? How are you going to create greater levels of production from your clinical team, greater levels of efficiency, higher quality of care based on net promoter score. Those are things that CEOs think with. How am I going to live a better 2024 than I did 2023? Doing the same thing you did in 2023 is not going to do it. Running the same schedule is not going to do it. Sticking with the same EMR program or system that you've had for 10 years probably needs to be relooked at. I mean, there are some systems out there that are just the Ferraris of EMR systems. I just had one of the CEOs on my podcast a few weeks ago. I do billing for so many EMR systems. We get to look at all of them. Learn from people who get their hands in the jar of all these EMR systems as to which ones work best and why. There's a top 5, and I think you're going to win with all those top 5. It's just some of them are nudging each other out with little nuances here and there. Take advantage of learning about those. But beyond all of that, if you don't have the right schedule, you will not optimize your space, your staff, your clinical time, and your great opportunity for patient outcomes. Optimizing your schedule leads into goodness in all other areas of your practice. Take a look at it. If you need help, reach into jenn@megbusiness.com. Go to my website, form fill, and schedule yourself a practice evaluation call with myself or Laura. We will evaluate how things are going on in your practice, and we will recommend to you what you can do to change things to make them even better. We will recommend particular services that we have that will even enhance your delivery system even more. The name of the game is help as many people as you can in your community and give them as much care as you can with each and every engagement, because you are blessed and fortunate that they picked your clinic over somebody else's. That's my message for this week. It all boils down to the schedule. If you want true freedom, you have to address that clinical schedule. You have to find the schedule that best matches your patient demographics. I can help you with that if you want my help. All you got to do is reach in. We'll get on the call. We'll do Zoom. We'll figure this out together. That's it, everybody. Until next week, start each and every day expecting to do well.